Evening, everybody. My video I posted it this afternoon didn't have sound. I'm trying to fix it, or I will remake it, tomorrow. I said that in the short I made, but I wanted to do, a video on the more regular topics I talk about, and this one has been in the comments a couple times, and I said I'd get to it. I'm a man of my word, so I'm getting to it. The question arose of what exactly is a dark empath? Are INFJs dark empaths? Are dark empaths dangerous? Well, let's get into that, shall we? So, I guess first and foremost, we should ask the question, what is a dark empath? A dark empath is someone who uses cognitive empathy at the expense of others. In other words, they can read people pretty well. They can feel what they're going through. But instead of trying to help that person, as most empaths do, including myself, the dark empath tries to use that to their advantage. So in other words, they recognize someone's situation without sympathizing with them. They can recognize that person's in pain. This bothers them, but they can maintain emotional distance and twist that situation to their favor, usually for gain. Keep in mind, a dark empath is not a formal mental health symptom or diagnostics. Yeah. So a dark empath, in other words, a dark empath can identify what somebody's going through even if they don't feel sympathy for them or a desire to support them. They essentially just recognize it. There are three types of empathy usually discussed. Cognitive empathy, which is the ability to understand somebody's perspective without emotional involvement. You understand the situation, but you feel no emotions. That is not the standard INFJ or ENFJ for that matter. Emotional empathy, being able to feel the emotions of somebody else as if you were going through that experience too. That's where the ENFJs tend to fall. And then compassionate empathy, where a lot of INFJs tend to fall, is a combination of the two, where you understand another's perspective and your emotions respond to that person's pain, but you cannot feel it yourself because perhaps, you cannot be in that situation. Like I can feel empathy for somebody who is affected by racism, friends of mine who are African American, but obviously I can't know what it's like to live the Black experience. I can see, the looks on their faces and go, wow, that's, you know, word that begins with an F, up, algorithm, and then get angry about the state of the world and how things need to change. That still goes on today, but I don't know what that's like to go through, or the prejudices that come with that, because I'm visibly, obviously, I'm not of that community. Same thing as I don't, I get angry a lot of times with sexism and misogyny, but I am not a woman, I'm a male. And that one hits particularly home because I hear a lot of horror stories about that from my sister witches, who then are often vilified for being witches and seeking empowerment through witchcraft. Hail Lilith. So, dark empaths, how do they think and feel? Important to know. Got to know what you're dealing with, what their end game is. I always say that. Always wonder what somebody's end game is. So there is research that suggests, from what I read, that dark empaths often feel a lack of pleasure from social rewards. So they're not really, trying to get the adulation of people around them per se. However, they do feel a need for attention. Like they want to be the center of attention, but like the attaboys and the you're so great doesn't really mean much to them. They have a high attunement for others' experiences and circumstances. So when somebody's going through a rough time, the dark empath can try to use that person to serve their end game. They will sort of fake be there for that person, but use them for a pawn in their game. They experience emotional distance or detachment. They can cognitively, understand what someone is going through and empathize with that situation, but without actually feeling those emotions, like a standard empath would, like myself. Dark empaths have a drive towards grandiosity, but is conflicted by intense self-criticism. So they're very grandiose. They tend to be extroverted. So that kind of excludes, our INFJs, dark empaths. I suppose it's possible, but I don't think very many are. Dark empaths tend to be extroverted and they tend to go for grandiosity, which most INFJs don't, and they are conflicted by intense self-criticism that they're never good enough. That INFJs do. So how do dark empaths act? They tend to exhibit vindictive behaviors. They're very big on gossiping, bullying, and intimidating. I believe recently, a few months back, that I was working with someone who was a dark empath, because this individual, would refer to themselves as an empath, but in my opinion didn't really display the traits of a true empath, because this person made everything about themselves. And really, when, the slightest thing that this individual was going through would always have to be center stage. And whenever somebody else was going through something objectively worse, this person would just be like, oh, well, would try to use that to their advantage. And this person was certainly into bullying, gossiping, and intimidation, especially in regard to this person using their position of authority to a point of absolute power over their subordinate's life, in my opinion. So dark empaths also use emotional manipulation tactics for taking advantage of others. They try to pretend that they're helping somebody and, I'm helping you do the right thing, when really they're just getting them to do what they want them to do. It's like, this is wrong and bad because I said so, kind of thing. And it's like, you should do this instead because I said so, and probably because it serves my means, or, do this because this is what my enabler wants, and my enabler will serve me better, kind of thing. They have physical aggression towards others. Dark empaths don't like when people call them out. They get very aggressive very quick. And yes, they have extroversion. They like being the center of attention. They like people's adoration and attention, but it doesn't mean much to them, kind of thing. Kind of doesn't make sense, but on its face value, but if you observe it, it does. So manipulation tactics that they use, common manipulation tactics that dark empath use, sadly, a lot of it is in common with narcissists. And one may think a dark empath is perhaps a narcissist, or at least one that displays narcissistic tendencies. Because common tactics that a dark empath will use is gaslighting, love bombing, used by an empath, is very dangerous. My friend John Atack speaks at length in his videos and his book about narcissistic cult leaders who weaponize empaths for recruitment purposes, because weaponized empaths can be very dangerous because they're much, kind empathic people who are under coercive control, can be weaponized to bring people into abusive cults such as Scientology, which he was a member of, decades ago. So a dark empath, very much will do love bombing to try to convince somebody they're their friend, and then try to manipulate that person to bend to their every will. And the second that person, doesn't bend to their will and thinks they have a friend they can rely on, but if they're not abiding by the dark empath's will, they will ghost them. So another manipulation tactic a dark empath is big on is ghosting. They're big on playing the victim as well. Dark empaths always, if somebody else is going through something, the dark empath will try to one-up them and talk about how much worse they have it. They can be very intimidating, especially if they're in positions of power. They will, throw that power around far beyond the power they actually have and exploit that power and try to intimidate people into doing things that they have no right to be telling them to do, on the basis of, well, I have power, so I'm by definition right, and you must do what I say no matter what. Like, the boss is never wrong and can't be wrong by definition, kind of thing. And yes, as I mentioned, gossiping. They're very big in gossiping behind people's back. The dark empaths, who can appear empathic at times, are usually very fake people when, they're around different people. They can be very charming, and they can put you on a pedestal at first. That's a sign of love bombing. and then they will be the person who knocks that pedestal down once you are deemed no longer useful to them. An example of something a dark empath may say that I found in my research is, "Wow, that is a beautiful dress on you. I bet you would be glad when you lose 50 pounds so it'll look even better." That's an example of, a kind of comment, alleged comment a dark empath will play. Dark empaths also are at times masters of the dark triad, which is narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. I did a video on the dark triad. You should check it out. So, all in all, the dark empath can be very dangerous because you can believe and be led to believe that this is somebody who genuinely cares about you, who genuinely wants to help you, who can understand what you're going through, and they can, but they're not feeling the emotions you're going through, and everything you're telling them, you're being vulnerable around them. They're using that as ammo, and they know how to twist that to use you, to weaponize your pain for their agenda, because yes, they can relate to it, but no, they are not motivated by helping others and righting wrongs and progressing society. They're motivated by only their end goals, and they try to mask themselves as a true empath to get that means. They're very dark empaths love being like, the captain of the team or the queen bee. They love being the leader of the group. They're very extroverted that way, and they want their group to think like, oh, this person's great, they'll do anything for anybody. No, only if it serves their goal. And you may not see that at the time. Dark empaths are good at the long game. So they can be very tricky to spot. It's a relatively new thing talking about dark empaths and how they exist, why they exist. We'll have to wait for another video. So I hope this gives a brief understanding of what a dark empath is and generally how they operate. So remember, if someone's being empathic to you, but it doesn't feel like, they're feeling the emotions you're feeling, trust your intuition about maybe if that something doesn't feel quite right. And keep in mind, your integrity. If you observe this, it would be in the best for your integrity that if you think someone is faking helping somebody, faking being an empath, that you let that person that is potentially being used know that. Obviously, the choice is their own whether they want to believe you, but nonetheless, if you see something that perhaps they can't, then shouldn't you give them that knowledge, and they can make their own conclusions. It's like court, make arguments and decide. So I hope that was insightful about what a dark empath is, and I will be back tomorrow. Please like and subscribe, click the notification button, check out older videos, and support the channel with a tip if you feel I deserve it.